after family distance takes courage and sometimes a few thoughtful do's and don'ts. In part two, we talk about how to approach repair, manage those strong emotions, and find fulfillment even when reconciliation isn't possible. Stay tuned.
What people do a lot of times is they grab their anger or their sadness or their bitterness and they start to become more angry, or they become more distant, or they be unkind, or they talk about them, and then that door's shut, right? And then we no longer have an estrangement. We have a cutoff and the door is slammed shut. Estrangement, a lot of times it's the door's just a little open. Hey, I'm taking a break for a minute, but I hope we can get back to something better. I would say for the party who's been estranged is, how can you make sure that you're living in such a way that door remains open? And it's not easy, because if you see them on a regular basis, it's going to hurt every time. I would say that's going to go away, but that's part.
That was very helpful. And what about the people that are considering creating some level of estrangement or boundary to separate that contact a little bit more? They want to do it right. And they just feel like, you know what, this person is really toxic in my life. I don't really trust them around my family. Let's say the listeners are wanting to go that route and they're almost ready to, because they feel like they've been taken advantage of. How do you know that you're doing it wisely and that you should move forward with some of those steps?
Yeah. And this is going to be individualistic for every person. Like in the case with your friend, there was no conversation. There's no, hey, this is what I need from our relationship and you're not giving it to me. There was just, hey, see ya. I'm done with you. That is a cutoff, right? So that's the door slamming, right? If you're considering, hey, this person is toxic for me, they're unkind, they make me feel disrespected, they don't honor my parenting or whatever it is, right? Start with the conversation, right? Like before you choose to estrange, start with the conversation. A lot of times, estrangement doesn't happen in one instance. It's usually a lot of things that build up over time to where it's, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to choose a different path. So make sure that those conversations are, a lot of times we get offended, but we don't say anything. We get offended, we hold it, and we just build this resentment, and it grows and it grows, and there's no conversation. So estrangements and cutoffs are often avoided if that conversation is happening regularly. I need you not to correct me when I'm parenting. I need you to not show up in this way because that's hurtful. If the person cannot do it, you've had the conversations, you've asked for the change, they're incapable or not willing to change, then that's a conversation. And I think estrangement looks different for everyone. I'm kind of the opinion that estrangement for reasons of abuse and neglect, you should never be abused by anyone physically, spiritually, emotionally. That's a whole different thing, right? When we're talking about major trauma, it isn't keep these people in your life. If you're being abused, if you're being hurt in a very significant manner, you should not have to have those people around you. There's a chance for us to grow and become something better if we have some conversations about it before the estrangement happens. That's beautiful, right? When I work with couples who are struggling with their marriage, I often work on Gottman's family therapy. And Gottman uses the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And he'll say there are 4 things that couples can do that I can tell. He says when him and his wife have this wonderful thing that they do, they can tell with a 90+% certainty whether the couple will stay together. And I talk about these with estrangement too, because I think it's important to keep these in mind before you go, I'm out, I'm done. And you got to look internally too. It's looking at what your part is. So the 4 horsemen, as we've got complaining, right? I'm constantly complaining about my parent or my sibling. They're always doing this and we're talking about it with other people. And that's number 1, right? So then there's contempt. Like I am super mad at them all the time. Everything they do makes me mad. My mom's always late. She's horrible and disrespectful and I hate her, right? We get really angry and there's contempt. And contempt is not just, I don't like what you did. It's, I don't like you personally. The third one is defensiveness. If you're noticing that everything this person does offends you, you're super defensive around this person, then it's time to look inside and be like, okay, what is this hitting for me? Why am I assuming the worst of this person every time I see them? They do something, I'm like, they did it for that reason. Is that an assumption? Are you being defensive? Or is this really what they're doing? So looking inwardly is really important to be like, okay, am I criticizing? Am I contemptuous? Do I find that everything they do makes me offended? Then that's time to go, maybe it's a me, maybe it's both of us. Maybe let's kind of work through this and think about it. Because the 4th horseman is stonewalling, which is like, I'm going to cut you off. I'm not going to talk to you. Silent treatment. shove, right? And if these 4 things can ruin marriages, they can ruin relationships in general. And
Right.
so if we're cutting people off in a relationship, there's an argument, someone's having an argument with something, I'm not talking about it with you, I'm just going to walk away. Well, what that does is both parties get more bitter. The more silent, the more bitter. We just get more angry. I'm so much more angry than I was before I stopped talking to you. And sometimes it's like 3 days later, I'm like, I don't even know what we fought over, but I'm super mad. And it's the same thing with a cutoff or a huge estrangement too. A lot of times, if it's done in a slam the door situation with no conversation, no internal dialogue, it creates bitter. The question I would have you ask is, are you estranging for punishing the other person or for protecting yourself? And I think that's important, right? Because do we cut someone off because I don't like what they're saying or doing? I'm assuming the worst. I'm going to cut them off, and that's going to make them hurt, right? So we have to ask some pretty hard questions. And I have everyone ask those 4 things. Look inside. What's a part of your decisions? If those 4 things, you're like, no, I honestly don't feel like I'm defensive. I don't feel like I'm overcritical. I feel like they're hurting me all the time. I think it's time for a conversation to be like, hey, I'm going to need a break, a little bit of a space from you because I feel hurt constantly. It's kind of a tricky question that you ask because there's a lot to it.
No, that was incredible. That was very helpful. I especially love that last part. Is it a punishment or is it for protection? Even I was thinking of what I would say, what my clients would say. You said if there's significant abuse, which I get, but I also know there's a lot of us out there that tell ourselves these stories. And in our mind, it's very significant and we love the drama of it. But if you check in with the other person or other people observing it, they're like, I don't know that there's significant abuse here. I think the story you're telling yourself is maybe you're spiritually or emotionally abused when it might just be an unwillingness to have those hard conversations, to resolve conflicts. Like you just want to nurse your wounds rather than work through it. And I know you spoke to that too, just kind of reinforcing that, like, make sure you're being honest with yourself and checking your story. If you're not really sure, it always helps me to ask my spouse or a good friend that's not somebody that's just fueling the fire, because it's very easy to get stuck in that narrative that is just not always accurate.
You can jump on the Reddits and just
Right.
everything. I love what you're saying because I think people often love being the victim sometimes, right? And I think now with social media too, the trend is trauma bonding. We're going to talk about our things and, oh, I was totally abused as a kid too. My dad spanked me. Back in that day, people spanked, right? And so we're going to see things different than maybe our parents did. I think parents also have to be careful too when we're trying to be open and listen to our children who come to us and say, you know what, I think you were abusive. I think neglected or did not treat me well. Before we get defensive, before we jump back and go, hold on, my parents did that and I'm not calling them abusive. We live in a different world now. Everything is different. The things that this generation experiences are different than our parents did or than we did. And so we have to be quick to be like, okay, I actually am really sorry that you feel that way, that I can see that you're hurt and I can understand how that could feel. And I just want to let you know, I'm sorry that that hurt you. We don't have to agree to make people understand that we feel sorry for their pain. It is a different world that we live in. And so I would say for parents, be careful, or for the parents of adult children, to not excuse the behavior by going, well, my parents did that. It's just what we do. And then I would say to the younger generation who are considering the cutoff, be aware of your own intentions. Do I need to feel like the victim? What do I need from this? I always tell my clients, please be curious. Be curious as to why you need people to know that you were abused or you were neglected when you were spanked, sent to your room, or put in timeout. What about that makes you need to feel that there is victimization in that? Does that make sense? Because there is significant abuse. There is, and I say that in that I'm not trying to lessen anybody else's pain. What we feel is real to us. But I think sometimes, like to your point, what we see as abuse and what we see as neglect, we might need to take a closer magnifying glass to that and be like, okay, were they doing the best with what they had?
Right.
Were they offering me what they could offer me? Did they show up in the best way that they knew how?
Really grateful you're talking about this too, because I do think it's very trendy. I know that it's just sometimes baffling to me, but it does seem to be this younger generation, not completely, but anybody that's consuming more social media. I've noticed that happens more, where this tendency to be much more of the victim, or justifying behaviors. And you alluded to this. One thing that helps me and that I have my clients do is I ask them to consider the end. If you're at your funeral, a ghost watching all of it or something, and looking at all these relationships, how you impacted people positively and negatively, would you have regret looking back on how you cut that person off? Would you have regret at that estrangement? Or did you feel like you became a better version of yourself and even helped them become a better version, or maybe other people in that story? I think when we pose some questions like that, it helps us take a step back and stop justifying or being the victim and recognize, could I have done something to really deepen that connection and work through something and become my better self in that process? And it's a little bit harder to justify when we put it like that. But any thoughts on that?
I think that's brilliant. We always need to turn around and look at ourselves and be like, hey, what do I want in my life? What do I want in my relationships? And how do I get there? Someone else might do something you don't agree with. But I'm always for like, hey, let's give people grace. Let's be like, hey, I recognize where you came from. And I recognize that you did the best with what you had, right? And we talked about this earlier, but I'll constantly say, there seems to be two different kinds of people: those who can take their circumstances and become better, and those who take their circumstances and become bitter. And we get to choose what that looks like. It isn't an easy thing all the time. I don't mean to say that this is just, oh, it's black and white, it's so easy. But it is important to think about that. I love how you're saying, here I am at my funeral and I'm looking at these people. Did I take the way that our relationship went, and did I make myself more bitter? Did I choose to take that relationship that wasn't awesome, that maybe even was toxic, and made myself bitter? Or did I do the best that I could, right? I have ones who, my father, for example, his father was an alcoholic, and most of my father's siblings haven't talked to their dad ever, and he died and didn't have any relationship with their father. My dad forgave his father. I think my dad's fantastic. He chose to say, hey, my dad's got a problem. He's got a mental illness. He's got an addiction. This is my dad. And I'm going to just love him for what he is. I knew my grandfather. I think I was one of my only cousins and my siblings that knew their grandfather. I am grateful for my dad that he showed up in a way of forgiveness instead of condemnation. He could have done either one. That relationship was not awesome as a kid. He was not treated well. My grandfather changed, and my dad was now in a position to go, hey, I feel like you're safe. I feel like you've healed from your difficulties, and I'm going to let you back in my life. I, as a grandchild, will always be thankful that I knew my grandfather and that I have that relationship with him. So I think that's important. What you said was beautiful. Like, look at what you want. Look at your relationships from a long-term perspective. What do you want it to look like? I only saw my grandfather a couple times a year. My dad didn't go there every day. It was a relationship that I had, because my dad said, here's how I can show up and here's how I can be involved in my dad's life. So you have to ask that question: how are your decisions affecting your relationships, but also the people around you, your children, your grandchildren, all the people around you? So I think what you're saying is important. We want to live a life without regret. And we're all going to have some, right? We all make decisions where we're like, what did I do? That was so dumb. But relationships are big, right? We are meant to have people in our lives. People need people. So it's important to figure out what you want each relationship to look like and what you're willing to sacrifice to keep it or not, right? If it's hurting you, if it is hurting your children, if it is not a good environment, you have to make that decision, and you have to be strong with that conviction. Think all these things through. Make your decision based on a lot of things.
I'm really grateful that you're speaking to so many of these things. Better versus bitter. That's a good way to look at it. Like, what is this doing for me? I appreciate the story you told us about your grandpa, to contrast my other story with my friend with this other one where now I'm considering taking a break from a family member. That's not something that I do lightly at all, because again, there's multiple players here. And for me personally, I have considered it in the past, but it felt like done out of bitterness and like a punishment. But this time, like, I feel very peaceful, very calm. There's been several conversations between key people on what as a family we're okay with, what we're not okay with. It's continued to be this pattern that keeps happening. And I don't feel really triggered and super angry at this point. It is more this peaceful, intuitive feeling that key things are not in place to make this healthy for all parties involved right now. And that does not mean it's like a full cutoff. There is this belief that there will be improvement, But at some point, you're just becoming a doormat if you don't have boundaries. And maybe you do, but you're not maintaining them. Nothing really happens when there's just that repeated pattern of chaos and unhealthy responses that other people are witnessing. And just because this is a public one, I can't go more into detail here, but in this key relationship, it feels really good. It's a different feeling than feeling like that bitterness and that justification and that drama and this narrative that I'm like the heroine and the bad guy. And it's instead, no, there's key conversations that need to be had. Like, this is the line in the sand. And until A, B, and C is happening, we don't feel comfortable interacting for now. We love you. We believe in you. And that's where we're at. I feel like with things that you said and the stories we both shared, hopefully that can help people understand how they can do this in a way that is not more destructive, but can create greater connection or intimacy down the road. Any other thoughts for that? Maybe warning signs or things that have helped your clients as they've tried to determine, do I take that step forward towards taking a break from somebody?
Yeah, what you said was perfect. I feel peaceful. I don't feel angry. I don't feel bitter. I feel like I need this. I feel like this is right for me. This is good for me. It's a boundary for now, some time away to see if we can heal this relationship. And when I say we, it takes both people. If you're the only one willing to work on the relationship and the other person's like, well, sorry, this is who I am. Okay, well, then that's not going to be okay with me. That's going to be a difficult thing. Estrangement is hard. Having feelings of extreme peace and joy and happiness, it doesn't go hand in hand. But if you can feel like I've had the conversations, I've thought through this, I've worked with my significant others to work through this, and it still feels like the right thing to do. Yes, you need to go through with what feels best for you, but keeping into consideration all the other things that come into play. I love what you said. This is what I need to do for now because you're not in a place to hear me. You're not in a place to change. You're not in a place to work through things to make them better. It's not a punishment. That's me saying, let's just see. But I hope you change. I hope you can see that I miss you and I want you to be in my life. But if you can't change and you can't become what I need, then for my own protection and my family's protection, I'm going to need to step away for a bit. So there's a sense of peace and an understanding that you did everything possible. Same thing with divorced couples asking whether they should get divorced. I'm never going to tell them. But where do you feel in this? Do you feel like you've exhausted all of your efforts? Do you feel like you've put your heart and soul into making this work? Have you done your part? And then if so, you make that decision. There are no easy decisions in these situations. You'll know if you've done enough. You know that you've tried and exhausted everything you can think of and worked hard to help this relationship not be toxic and difficult. But if it can't, you have to make your own difficult decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think just reiterating a certain part that you said too is that ownership on both sides. Sometimes that can be a good indication if something's needed. I had an ex-stepdad, for example, that it was always 100% the other person, and nothing you could do would ever convince him otherwise. And in that relationship, my mom finally got to the point, there's no working through this if there's not both sides coming together and trying to work through things. So she eventually, like, he had threatened divorce for so long. And finally, she's like, okay. We were all like, yes. How much work can be done when there's not ownership? Like, there's always something we can say, okay, my part is this. I teach my kids a lot more about that. That's something I didn't understand before. So something to examine anyway. But
Yeah, no, I love it.
so many wonderful things that you shared today that really, I think, will help listeners that are feeling conflicted. Do I have a break from a family member? How do I handle this cutoff from somebody cutting me out of their life? And it's really hurtful. You really spoke to both sides, and I think this will really help a lot of people. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing this.
For having me. It was
Really great.
wonderful.
If people want to reach out to you, if they have questions or maybe they want to see you over a therapist or anything, do you have a website or any way we can reach you?
JanetteBeverley.com. And my name is spelled kind of funny, but JanetteBeverley.com. I'm at Nampa Valley Counseling in Nampa, Idaho.
Wonderful. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. And thank you again for all of your insight and wisdom.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending this time with us as we continue learning how to heal and grow from family disconnection. Visit fulfillmenttherapy.org to explore one-on-one coaching, our new blog posts for every episode, or ways to get involved through our internship program and socials for ongoing encouragement and tools from Fulfillment Therapy. You can also email us at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org with any questions or things you'd like to learn more about. We'll see you back here next Monday with a new episode.